Good morning. My name is Joseph Murray, and I go to Tuscaloosa Christian School. This is equal rights for all, special privileges for none. Imagine you are back in elementary school, and your teacher tells your class that today you will be electing a class president. Most people would assume that the person who received the most votes would be elected president. Well, in a classroom, you would be correct. But for some reason, our founding fathers decided against a simple national popular vote to elect the President of the United States, and instead settled on a compromise to make everyone happy. The unique system America uses to elect our president is called the Electoral College. Today, I will explain to you how it works and share with you some interesting facts about this voting process. Hopefully, by the end of my speech, it will be apparent whether the Electoral College truly provides equal rights for all, or if it gives special privileges to some. Some of you may be asking yourselves, what even is the Electoral College? The Electoral College is essentially the 538 votes that determine who wins the presidency in the United States of America. The winner of at least 270 of those votes, which is a majority, becomes president. There are 538 Electoral College votes because there are 435 members of the House of Representatives, plus 100 senators, plus 3 electors that go to Washington, D.C. States are distributed different amounts of electors based on their number of members of the House plus their number of senators. This means that a state's number of electors is mainly based on population, since that is how House member count is determined. On Election Day, millions of Americans all around the country go to cast their vote, but they're actually just voting for the party of their candidate. Almost every state uses the winner-take-all method, where the winning party in each state picks their electors to vote on a candidate for president. Because the electors are from the same party, they almost always vote in unison to represent their state. Though at first glance, the Electoral College seems to make sense, it still finds itself surrounded by controversy. Some Americans think that the Electoral College should be abolished, since it can allow those who lose a popular vote to still win an election. On the other hand, proponents of the Electoral College look to why it was originally created in defense of their argument of why it should be kept. So let us do just that. Our founders had a fear that a national popular vote for president could allow for less populated states to be forgotten. They thought that if there was a national popular vote, important issues that only small states cared about would be ignored, since candidates could just focus on issues prevalent in the big states. Their solution was to distribute electors based on both chambers of Congress. You see, if electors were based solely on the House of Representatives, which is population-based, every elector would represent the same amount of people nationwide. But since every state gets 2 senators, every state gets an additional 2 electors, which messes up the proportions and gives small states that start with fewer House members more representation than they should. It may not sound like a lot, but believe it or not, a Wyomingite's vote is worth about 4 times that of a Californian's vote. This is a phenomenon called the senatorial bump. Advocates for the Electoral College would tell you that the senatorial bump is important to protect small states. Supporters think by over-representing small state citizens, the Electoral College forces candidates to focus on small state issues. However, a Stanford professor, Jack Rakove, brings up an interesting point in his article, Should We Abolish the Electoral College? He says that the real interests of small state voters are never determined by the relative size of the population of their state. If, say, environmental sustainability or abortion or the Second Amendment is your dominant concern, it does not matter whether you live in Wyoming or California, Pennsylvania or Delaware. The size of the state does not affect our real political preferences, even though the Electoral College system imagines that it does. He makes a great point. Small states don't have unique political issues anymore. They simply have an opinion, just like everyone else, on the same issues we all care about. If you moved to a different state, your political views would not change, but for some reason, your ballot's weight in deciding the next president would. Even if the Electoral College's aim is to protect small states, it doesn't do that. In the 2024 election, about 88% of the candidates' 285 campaign events were located in just 7 states. Interestingly, these states weren't particularly large or small states. They were Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. This is because the Electoral College forces candidates to focus on swing states, which are places where they poll with close margins. Because of the winner-take-all method, if a candidate already knows he will win or lose a state, he has no reason to focus on it. As long as a majority of that state votes on a candidate, he'll end up with all of those electors. Meanwhile, swing states are treated like royalty and get promises made to them all throughout the campaign just so that they can push their candidate right over the 270 mark. The concept of swing states alienates much of the U.S. from the critical part of an election. Another argument holds that rural states can't be ignored because of highly populated cities. Defenders of the Electoral College think that if a candidate just focused on big city issues, he could sweep all the big cities and win an election, ignoring a lot of us. Not only is this point misleading, since we've already discussed that most Americans care about the same issues, but this entire scenario is just mathematically impossible. Winning the popular vote through just a few cities is a false concept that can't happen. Did you know that only 19.47% of Americans actually live in the top 100 cities? Supporters of the Electoral College ignore the reality of modern population distribution in an attempt to justify their way of electing the president. All of what I've said boils down to this. The Electoral College is unfair because, through its odd means of letting electors vote, not real working Americans, it can allow for a loser of the popular vote to win the election. No matter how you spin it, that's not fair. The Electoral College denies a fundamental principle of equality, that everyone's vote, no matter where it's cast, should be equal. Unfortunately, a big reason why most Republicans don't support getting rid of the Electoral College is because they believe a false narrative that Republicans could never win the election again without the Electoral College. That is a lie. Not only did we just see Donald Trump win the popular vote, but we have no idea how the election would go if the Electoral College were absent. This is largely due to the fact that the Electoral College gives no incentive to vote if you are not in a swing state. The winner-take-all method also gives meaningless votes to many Americans, since any vote cast after the 50% mark is hit in any given state has no impact on the election. The obvious solution is to implement a national popular vote to determine the presidency. Thomas Jefferson once said, "Equal rights for all, special privileges for none." But right now, the Electoral College gives equal rights to none and special privileges to some. A national popular vote would eliminate special privileges given to small and swing states and provide equal and meaningful votes for everyone. The Electoral College is an extremely flawed system that should be abolished because it disproportionately favors small states, alienates much of the U.S. from the most important part of an election, and most importantly, can nullify the will of the people by allowing a loser of the popular vote to win an election. It is time to give equal rights to all and special privileges to none by abolishing the Electoral College.